Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
Happy Friday, everybody. Chad Benson in for Greg Corombos. Jim Geraghty is here. We got a lot of good stuff on the plate. We got the good, we got the bad, and we got the crazy. But let's start with the good, and anytime we could look at numbers like this when it comes to jobs, employment, Jim, that's good.
It is. The new unemployment numbers are out. The headline that's good is that the unemployment rate in the United States is now down to 3.9%, which is really, really low by historical standards, approaching peak employment if we're not there. The actual number of jobs created was 157,000. That was a little bit less than expected. And so some people are saying, yeah, this isn't that great. However, they did improve the numbers the last 2 months of the revision. So you add it all together, this is still pretty darn good. Labor force participation rate hasn't really changed. Employment population ratio hasn't changed. Although actually, it's over the course of the year, it's up 0.3 of a percentage point, moving in the right direction. Other numbers of people who are working part-time, want full-time, not major significant changes in there. We're adding in the neighborhood of about 224,000 jobs each month, which is pretty darn good. That's obviously we have had ever since the plummeting to the depths of the Great Recession, it has been a long, hard slog back up. But we now have, many consecutive years of this, and there's kind of been this sense of, okay, when is this, recovery going to run out? When are we going to stop having consecutive months of job creation? And it's looking pretty good. Now, the interesting thing is people are calculating, why was this number a little bit lower than expected? Chad, I'm sure you saw the news probably about a month or two ago. The icon of our childhood, Toys R Us, closed its doors. And that retail job employment was down significantly this month. People think that number reflects the end of everybody who was working for Toys R Us. So one time, bit of bad news drop representing a significant change in the toy industry and shopping habits. But overall, things are looking pretty good on the economic front and job creation. And that's good news for the Trump administration, good news for the GOP heading into the midterms, and good news for the country as a whole.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I mean, the reality is we still vote with our pocketbooks, and no matter how much people may have a disdain for the president, whether it's as a human being or his politics, a lot of people get inside there, and as you know, Jim, they say, yeah, the train's moving in the right direction, and I don't really see a reason to derail the train right now. And whether people want to believe it or not, Trump is on the ballot this November, and the reality of these kind of job numbers and the growth we've seen, at least in his first, year and a half as president plus, that economic wise is great for them, despite all the other drama around Trump and his presidency.
Yeah. I would concur with just about all of that. We'll see obviously there's still a little bit of time between now and Election Day, but people worried a bit about the tariffs and whether that might catch up to the economy. But overall, this is an economy that is cruising along pretty darn well when it comes to job creation, and people are, feeling pretty good about their pocketbooks, and that's a good state to head into a midterm election with.
Absolutely. We move from there to a bad, and this there's so many ways to go with this. I'm going to talk about this on my national show later on today, and this is Sarah Jeong is her name. She's been hired for the New York Times. She is. Her tweets that she has, and I said yesterday, tweets are now part of the resume of your life. So be careful what you do out there. Be careful of the things you said. We've seen it with athletes. We're seeing it with all kinds of people where they're finding things. James Gunn is somebody we talked about briefly yesterday. But she has some stuff that, to me, is it is ridiculous, and the way the New York Times is spinning it shows us right now that whatever moral high ground you think you stand on, New York Times, you've lost it completely with this one.
Yeah, I mean, look, between James Gunn, colleague Kevin Williamson, and lots of other folks, there'll be this question of, okay, this person has tweeted something in the past that is, sometimes controversial, sometimes incendiary, sometimes horrifying. In the case of Sarah Jeong, there was a lot of, aren't white people the worst? I enjoy making, fun of white people, blah, 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 blah. Breaking Bad and Battlestar Galactica are just white people being miserable, blah, 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 blah. This is, and many people have pointed out, look, if she was making fun of almost any other group in America, that would be an instant deal breaker. And she never would have been even, considered to be hired for the New York Times if she had something like this in her background. That sort of thing makes you a pariah, but you can say repeatedly snide and nasty things about white people as a group. And it's caused this huge argument amongst, some folks insisting, well, because whites are the majority in the country, they have the power. I'm sure there are a lot of whites who say, what power do I have? Mocking them is different, ridiculing them, saying the nastiest things about them is somehow okay. Now, the New York Times came out and said her journalism and the fact that she is a young Asian woman have made her a subject of frequent online harassment. For a period of time, she responded to that harassment by imitating the rhetoric of her harassers. She sees now that this approach only served to feed the vitriol that we see too often on social media. She regrets it, and the Times does not condone it. But, then they say, we are confident she will be an important voice for our editorial board moving forward, blah, 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 blah. Kind of what we expected from this. One of the things I've been thinking about, Chad, if she had read that aloud, those tweets in a editorial board meeting of the New York Times, Chad, do you think you would have seen people jumping up and saying, how dare you say that?
No. Look, no, not with the New York Times. My issue look, I never condone anybody, being fired. I find that we do that all too often. The problem is in this day and age, and as you know this, is you want to come out on this moral high ground. You're the New York Times. You're supposed to be this, and I don't call them the mainstream media. I call them the establishment media. That's what they are. They're establishment media, and you're supposed to be above this. You want equality, then equality comes with responsibility as well. And when you start to sugarcoat one side of it or paint a different picture, and then you go out there, like you say, your colleagues and many other friends of ours who've all faced the wrath of being fired because of something they tweeted or said offhanded, that's not equality to me. And that's where I think if we're going to get to that point of full equality, it's all about the responsibility of the things that you say and do, and not because, well, she's an Asian woman and she responded to her harassers this way. I don't really think all of this was responding to harassers, because when I read some of these, this wasn't about harassers. These were things that I love being mean. I love being mean to old white people. That's not a harasser. It's an old white person wandering by.
Chad, I will point out, though, it was brought to my attention by Stephen Miller, not the one who's in the White House, but the one on Twitter. Look, maybe there's a silver lining to this bad martini, is that he went through some of her other tweets that the New York Times apparently did not peruse. September 8th, 2013, quote, "A just God would not allow Tom Friedman to keep talking." Look, it's not like he deals with the New York Times editorial page very often. Oh, that's right. He writes for the New York Times op-ed page. Hope he doesn't come into the office much, though. David Brooks is an absolute nitwit. She wrote on, this is 2017. Ross Douthat is insufferable, but at least he has more than 2 brain cells to rub together. His column makes me want to jump out a window. Guys, what drugs do you think Paul Krugman does? Do you think the office meeting is going to be a little bit awkward going forward?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, many of them are also older white men. Let's not forget that. So that's the one thing I thought of today is like, you're going to be sitting around there and you're going to be looking around and they're going to know all the things you've said. And that's why I say that's part of the resume of your life now. And you got to remember, some of these, she was much younger and you say stuff. The racial stuff, to me, is where the accountability and personal responsibility needs to come in. And the funny thing is I've seen the New York Times kind of apologize for it. I haven't heard much from her about it.
Yeah. But say, worth noting, Twitter, it gives you the opportunity to share a thought instantaneously with the entire world, and depending on how quickly you can delete it, puts it out there, obviously semi-permanently. What it's taught us is that a lot of people have a lot of intemperate thoughts. They say and think a lot of nastier things than than polite society usually tolerates, because you're not seeing the person face to face. I'd like to think that if and when she sits down and meets with Paul Krugman, she doesn't say, "What drugs do you do? Your columns are smug. What is wrong with you?" All these things she has said on Twitter to Paul Krugman. We'll see how those meetings shake out. Maybe this is a good argument for why people really shouldn't be on Twitter. That there's just too many opportunities to write something that'll come back and haunt you later on.
And what's funny, Jim, is I have said I look at Twitter like I look at football. You pass the ball. Usually there's 2 things that can happen that are bad and one that's good. Too often than not, It's how it's received, not how it's put out there. And there's too many pitfalls. That's why I tweet as little as possible anymore. And if I do, it's very benign, because the reality is people are looking for the gotcha moments. Even if there's no gotcha there, they're still looking for it, especially if they don't like you. And there's no doubt that she gets harassed. I'm sure she does. But in the same, the same token, I think what a lot of people want in this day and age is, let's just have a little bit of a level playing field when we're going to be dealing with people, and don't burn one person's house down because you think they're pariah and you don't like their politics, and the other person, you like their politics, so you give them a pass.
Yeah. Well, it's not like anybody's saying we should all just switch sides, right? Right, Chad?
No. God, don't switch sides. Come on now. We move from there to, we've had our good, we've had our bad, and now we've got our crazy. And the Democrats are now inviting the NeverTrumpers to their party, but there are conditions.
Yeah, this is a op-ed by Bill Scher, who co-hosts a Blogging Heads show, contributing editor to Political Magazine, and a pretty much down the line Democrat, who basically is writing an invitation to the NeverTrumpers, to the folks who are Republican Party who are most vehemently anti-President Trump. He throws out David Brooks as an example, George Will, Max Boot. There's a big picture on the cover of Senator Jeff Flake. But he basically says it is time for you to join. The only principled and practical move left is to join the Democratic Party. Now, you might argue that in the case of some folks like Jen Rubin, maybe you could say that's already happened. Maybe there are some folks who are formally making that change. We talked about Bill Kristol earlier in the week. I don't think that John Kasich would necessarily approve of that label, but he has made the occasional noise about running as an independent, the idea of people leaving the Republican Party because they just don't feel like it's their home anymore. But I think what's really kind of fascinating about this offer is he says, well, look, you're not going to get any policy concessions. You're not going to get we're not changing on abortion rights, gun rights, any of those cultural issues, or really, we're not supporting tax cuts. We don't want smaller government. You get nothing. Please come join us. You're kind of like, well, wait a second. What's on the table? I get nothing that I would ever want in policy. And oh, by the way, you hate me, and you still think that I'm racist and greedy, and all those other terrible labels that they apply to all other Republicans. Does he realize how unappealing an offer this is? This is not a bargain. This is not a great deal. You get nothing you want policy-wise, but you don't have to put up with the president you can't stand. And
that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is come join our party so we can defeat the guy that you also don't like. And then if you want to stick around, you can, but you're not going to be allowed to have any finger foods at the party. You can't talk to anybody at the party. We're not going to play the kind of music you like at the party. It's basically going to be miserable for you. But if we want to join forces right now to defeat this person, you can join the party for a while.
Now, there's one other kind of interesting wrinkle here that I would note that I think if you look back, it's fascinating how the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia in 2016 kind of has faded from memory. But people pointed out how much there was a lot of flag waving, a lot of salutes to the military, and a whole sense of how much the Democratic Party at that moment seemed to be attempting to kind of de-emphasize the lefty side. Now, they still had the floor fight and, Bernie Sanders and all that kind of stuff. But there was a sense among some circles that the Democratic Party was really trying to say, okay, there are a bunch of Republican suburban women, a bunch of centrists, a bunch of people who are not comfortable with the direction the Republican Party is going in. We, the Democrats, can bring them over as long as we keep the freaks locked in the closet. All right, so lock them away. None of the Howard Dean stuff. None of the far lefty stuff. Keep those guys quiet. Push your best foot forward, and maybe we can convince these people. Obviously, 2016 didn't turn out the way they wanted, but it's not like since then they've continued on this centrist tack. Now all of a sudden it's Alexandria Ocasio pushing far to the left and abolish ICE and Medicare for all, and they're just right over to the left. And so my sense is that if you're a frustrated conservative NeverTrumper not comfortable with the populist direction of the Trump administration, Democrats are giving you nothing. You might as well just take your chances with Trump than go for a party that pretty much wants to put Elizabeth Warren in charge and
Yeah.
whose grassroots are very much, you look at, what's going on in college campuses, this cultural war mentality they've got. What's there for you on that side? And I don't think Scher realizes just what an extraordinarily unappetizing offer he's making to the NeverTrumpers.
No, I think they missed an opportunity to maybe bridge a gap of a lot of independents and a lot of people that were never Trumpers. And after that, and after they lost, they decided we're going to tear up that playbook and we're just going to continue to go further and further left. And the voices and the microphone we're going to hand to people are going to be people that really, I think, in so many ways are out of touch with what even the Democrats, the mainstream Democrats, are about. And it's crazy. But hey, come on over to the party if you don't really want to have fun at the party is what they're offering. It doesn't sound like something I really want to be a part of.
I can stay here and get nothing. So
yeah, that's right. Solid, fun week. I appreciate you letting me come on in and hang out with you, Jim. I look forward to talking to you again. We had a good time. Greg will be back on Monday. Are you here on Monday, Jim, or are you going on vacation?
I am, yes. So yeah, Greg and I will be back together for at least a week. I travel after that, but Chad, thanks very much for sitting in and helping make this week so much fun.
It was. Thank you so very much. You guys have a great weekend.